talking to myself again. But it's the only...
Good evening and welcome to NUFC Matters with me, Steve Wraith, and as always, I'm joined by Malcolm and John Gibson. Today on a Thursday, because yesterday, of course, John was getting married. Congratulations, John.
Many thanks.
Indeed.
It was a terrific day.
It was a fabulous day, John, wasn't it? It really was.
Yeah. Well, mind you, when you've got Malcolm McDonald, Supermac on one side, and Glenn McCrory, your boxing champion, on the other side, riding shotgun on you, yeah, it's either going to be a riot or you're not going to be able to do anything at all.
Well, it's a knockout combination, that, John.
Yeah, absolutely, mate. Absolutely. Happy time.
Great stuff. Well done, mate. Really pleased for you. Basically, we always look back on the weekend's game. Normally, we do the show on Wednesday. It seems a bit weird looking back when we're approaching the next game, but we're going to, because I know you two gents will have a lot to say about the Wolves' performance, or non-performance, should that be, Malcolm. Newcastle really with it has to be said, an attacking lineup against Wolverhampton Wanderers, really didn't start attacking until they conceded.
Well, yes. I have to say, I think that it would be a good idea if Steve Bruce took the anchors that are stuck in the ground of the of Newcastle's half, because it seems that a number of players just haven't got the ability nor the will to cross the halfway line. He made a comment after the game whereby he said, "But we had 6 attacking players in the side." Yeah, but they were in their own half, 4 or 5 of them. If you're not, you have to get the back 4 pushing up. The back 4 just keep dropping off. And that tells me that they haven't got any confidence in themselves at all. A confident defence, they push up and they keep pushing, and they make forwards, the opposing forwards, it makes them uncomfortable because the forwards can't go to where they want to be. And when I played for Arsenal, that was exactly, and I'd never seen anything quite like it. And they just pushed and pushed and pushed and pushed and pushed all the time. Newcastle don't do any of that. If you look at the sides at the top of the table at the moment, the top 4 or 5 sides, you'll see that that's what they do. That centre halves, they're getting up the backsides of midfield players and pushing them forward. The midfield players then push the forwards forward. But it's in reverse with Newcastle United. So the talk of 6 attacking players, they're stuck in their own half, most of them. And so I think, well, come on, Steve, what is it you're seeing? And I have to say that just for once, I wasn't watching the game from home. I was actually in a group of footballing lads. They've all played, and 1 or 2 were coaches, and the opinions that I am expressing now, I expressed then, and they all said absolutely right. They were all saying pretty much the same thing. So it's not just me that's seeing it; it's everybody. I think all Newcastle fans are seeing it that way. And the odd man out is Steve Bruce. So is he the only one that's right? I don't think so somehow.
No, me neither. I think the comment that probably best sums it up at the moment in the chat from the fans, John, is from Paul Oxley. Newcastle United will get football done away with if they keep playing like that. Worst football I'm watching from Newcastle United Football Club, and I've seen some rubbish over the years. Yeah. I don't think I could have said it better myself, Paul Oxley.
No, I understand that, and well said, Paul. Also, when you think that late on, from a free kick, we scored. That was the first shot on target. And Steve Bruce is talking about having 6 attacking players. We had 1 shot on target in the whole of the 90 minutes. That's it. Well, I'm going to say rubbish. It is. It's rubbish to think that that's enough. It isn't. You want to be putting a pressure on the goalkeeper, a pressure on the goal, a pressure on the defence. Newcastle aren't creating a pressure except on their own defence.
John, are you going to give a different opinion on this?
I'm certainly not, mate. I'm certainly not. I had great sympathy with the guy there that said that over the years he's watched some dross at Newcastle United, but this hits the bottom. And I mean, I feel the same way, and I've been part of that. What staggers me and worries me is that, you know, somehow Steve Bruce thinks the end product, i.e. the result, justifies the means. And he is taking great sort of comfort out of the fact that on the last 2 away games, we've got 2 1-1 draws. Well, if you look at our performance against Spurs and our performance against Wolves, I mean, it beggars belief that we managed to get a point because we were getting destroyed. Wolves only have the major percentage of possession that's above your 50% when they play Newcastle United. Every other time they are a counter-attacking side and have the ball less than their opponents. The only time they have the ball at all is when they play Newcastle United, and it was the same in this match. And talking as Malcolm was doing, Steve Bruce, about I feel 6 attackers, but they never attacked. What's the point in having attackers who never attack? And I mean, he played 4 wingers, Almiron, Murphy, Fraser, Maximum, and none of them on the wing, incidentally. I mean, either tucked into midfield or, I mean, when you get Murphy receiving pats on the back, not just for the goal, but for some of the defensive work he did as a right wing back, a right back on occasions. And when Almiron gets a pat on the back for running backwards towards his own goal and trying to get in tackles to cover the young fullback, it shows what's wrong with the team when you've got Murphy defending and Almiron defending, which is infinitely not the game. And by the way, I thought Murphy played well. I thought Murphy played well over the whole game before his goal. But the match we were awful. We were absolutely dreadful. And if you realise as well, Steve, in 3 of our last 4 games, we have scored from a free kick, a penalty, and an own goal. What does that tell you about how attractive we are going forward? When it's a free kick, it was a penalty at Spurs and an OG, of course, against Manchester United. It is dreadful. And I wrote an impassioned piece this week that went on Chronicle Live and has received a huge amount of comments on the bottom just about how awful Newcastle are playing this way under Steve Bruce. And Steve Bruce and his coaching team have got to accept responsibility for this. As we say, 6 attackers and we didn't attack. It is absolutely ludicrous. Everybody was mind blown, Malcolm. When we got the team sheet, we thought everybody was thinking, who's going to play well? By Jove, this is a forward-thinking lineup. It's got to be with all these guys in, you know. Murphy's in, Fraser's in, Maximum's still there, Almiron's in. You know, how we're going to feel, this is going to be some side. And it turns out to be more of the same, literally more of the same. And by the way, as I said in that piece I did, you know, if we want, as Geordies, if we want to torture ourselves, we'll go out onto the lawn and pull our teeth out with a pair of pliers. We don't have to watch Newcastle United. But we're getting the same effect by going and watching Newcastle United play.
Yeah, John Justice Allen Malcolm says there the reason he's getting lucky results is because the squad actually has potential. It's just been badly managed and using ridiculous tactics. Jet says got a completely different opinion, basically saying that the pressure to stay up forces managers to play negatively to get a result. Don't hate the players or managers, hate the game, which is an interesting way of looking at it.
It is, but I don't think it's. I don't think it's correct.
I mean, can I just quickly, Mal, before he goes in? I don't think it's had that much of effect on Leeds United coming up. Do you?
No,
They
absolutely.
don't look terrified, do you?
And it hadn't in the last 2 seasons with Sheffield United.
Yeah, it did. Yeah, I mean, there's somebody saying there, agree, John. It's very poor under Bruce, but to be fair, it was poor under Rafa. But the thing is, with Rafa, it was an organised defence. People knew what they were doing. They knew their role. They came into the team and they knew what they were expected to do. And under Steve Bruce, they really, really don't know what they're doing at times. And Mark Byers said earlier, the whole setup seems clueless. Bruce just stands there burping and licking his lips. Clements has got a clipboard and crayons, and Agnew just stands there looking edgy. Absolutely useless, a lot of them. And I know there's a little bit of tongue-in-cheek there about crayons and, you know, what have you, but he's not far off, really, Mal, about the way that, you know, our management team actually looks on the sidelines when the chips are down, and it's reflecting on the team. And I think one of the things I'd like to speak to you two about is the likes of Almiron. I know we all have a laugh and a joke about him smiling a lot, etc., and looking as if he's enjoying himself. I personally have never felt that there was anything wrong with that. But what was really evident on the weekend against Wolves was that the likes of Almiron and St. Maximin, more worryingly, actually looked miserable. They didn't look as if they were enjoying it on the weekend, Mal. And that was a big concern for me. It's almost as if they're having the actual talent that they have got, you know, more or less nullified, and they're not allowed to express themselves now. And that's a big concern.
Right. And they're 2 of a group of 6 attacking players. And the attacking players are looking miserable. And I couldn't agree more with what you said about the way they looked. Yes, they did. So why are the forwards, when they're there in abundance, why are they looking miserable? They should be rubbing their hands saying, I can't wait to get at them. But that's not the case. It's not happening in that way. So, you know, are there tactics being used that are actually demanding that they don't cross the halfway line or they don't get too near to the opposing penalty area? Because, and I can't believe that would be the case. But then I look at the side and I think, well, are they the instructions? You know, and because they don't attack. So Maximin, considering that there was supposed to be 6 attacking players, according to Steve Bruce, St. Maximin, all he did was just put his head down and run. And he would run just into a wall of Wolves players. They would dispossess him and turn the game round and head in the other direction. And I thought, why isn't St. Maximin just getting his head up, passing it about a bit? And he just kept doing the same thing, just kept running into trouble.
Yeah, no, I've got to agree. Really have to agree. It's looking really, really sorrowful at the minute, and I'm not sure how it's going to change, other than maybe some managerial change. Loads of great comments coming in on the chat. I will try and get through as many as I can. Ginger Hoskin says, I'm sorry, Steve, we big up these players, but Leeds players are better than Almiron and St. Maximin. We bring in flair players, but then down tools a lot. Alan Thompson asks a question. So we'll go to you first, John, on this one. Question, Malcolm and John, are we more frightened of the opposition instead of thinking positive of our side expressing themselves? So are we frightened of the opposition? Is he too scared to lose? Is that part of the problem, John?
I think it actually is. I mean, Malcolm will remember ever so well because he was part of the team. When we played with Joe Harvey, using an example, he never worried about the opposition. He worried about us. And he said, if we get it right, let them worry about us, not us worry about them. And Malcolm got the exact opposite when he went with England with Don Revie, who could give you a dossier which would choke a horse about what the opposition's like. I think we choke every time. Before the game, we bull up the opposition, don't we? Oh, it's going to be hugely tough. It Wolves. against Burnley. Oh yeah, against Burnley, against West Ham, against Everton. It's going to be tough. It's going to be tough. It's going to be tough. And then we want not to lose more than we want to win. And we forget that this is supposed to be the entertainment profession. We're supposed to entertain. We're supposed to try to win. We don't look as if we're trying to win. And you know, it's what we were saying there, I find disturbing. I look at that Newcastle team that played at Wolves, and there wasn't one happy player in that side. Didn't look happy. Certainly Almiron didn't, and most of his work was defensively. Would we ever think we would have said that Scotland, more than Newcastle, took the blinkers off Ryan Fraser, for example? He looked what he was, which was a good winger and dangerous and getting in crosses and all that. He looked like that playing for Scotland a week back, and he looked sort of playing a tight role centre midfield. He looked distraught for me at Wolves, and it just didn't work. And other players, for example, just going off at a tangent, I think that Hendrick has gone backwards from his opening day display at West Ham to what we're now getting from him these days. I think Hendrick is gone backwards now. Is that because he's not as good as people thought he was, or is it because of tactics, or what exactly is it? But he doesn't look anything like, I mean, he was never a world beater. He was always going to just be nice and tidy. But I do think he's gone backwards.
Mal, what's happening with the Longstaff brothers in your mind? I mean, you know, it really is confusing to me that we had this whole, you know, campaign almost, you know, we hope he stays. He's a big part of the squad, Matty Longstaff. You know, Sean Longstaff has essentially been, you know, revered, and Man United were coming in for him and big bids and all that, but we're keeping a hold of him. They're going to get a sniff. No, not a sniff at all. Particularly Matty Longstaff is just not involved in any way whatsoever, and it must be galling for him to be sat watching the game on the box, because he certainly wasn't at St James's Park. He didn't travel down to Wolves for the Wolves match, and so he's watching it on the box and seeing some very, very average performances, and thinking, and I can't get in this side. You know, the one thing that he actually showed everybody was that he was prepared to get forward and strike shots from the edge of the box, and he was scoring with them as well, and he was delighting fans, and he should have been delighting coaches and the manager. But so why he's not involved, I don't know. He's a midfield player who is prepared to shoot and will score goals. Or is that the problem?
I mean, the excuse put forward by Steve Bruce is that Matty's just coming back from injury, so he's played a couple of games in the reserves, and Sean's been ill. But at some stage, you've got to get them back involved. And I tell you what worries me, boys, is that the centre of midfield for me has become a concern. Before the season started, we thought we had far too many central midfield players. When we thought of Hayden and Shelby and Hendrick and the two Longstaffs, etc., we seemed to be knee deep. I'm not saying whether there was an awful lot of playmaker in there, but we were knee deep. Now I've got a concern over centre midfield, because we're not creative out of that position. And I know it's a lot to do with tactics, which is why we're not scoring goals, etc., etc. But we have got a problem in our two central midfield areas. I don't know if you agree, Malcolm. There isn't a settled situation with our two central midfielders.
No, absolutely, John. I couldn't agree more. And as you were talking, a point that you made actually brought something back to me. You know, that I have been saying how Shelby doesn't get forward enough, and that in fact he drops off at the wrong time, and stops the back four from being able to push up and get us as far away from their own goal as possible. Shelby wasn't playing on Sunday, and yet the back four still sat back. Why?
Yeah.
When you can get pushed up, and if the back four are dropping off, that tells me that they have no confidence in themselves, no confidence whatsoever, and that they don't think that they can push up and cope with what's coming at them. Well, if they can't do that, what are they doing? What are they doing being professional footballers? That's what you have to do. Get pushed as far away from your goal as you possibly can. The back four pushes up. That pushes the midfield forward. They get in support of the front line, which we never seem to see these days. And it's so glaringly obvious that why is it that everybody on the sidelines and watching it on television can see it? Because I was sat with this large group of guys, they all saw it. They're all saying, come on, get pushed up. And yet, Steve Bruce, who has been a terrific centre-half in his day, terrific, he's not seeing it. Or he's only too happy for it to happen and isn't saying a word. He's instigating it. And I can't believe that. Can't believe that a centre-half like him, having played all those years for Manchester United, is happy to see the Newcastle back four just drop off and stay there.
It's a good question for both of you, this then. So Malcolm, as you've got the mic, you take it first. If you were manager of Newcastle at the weekend, Shelby's out still, who would you have playing in the centre of midfield? Who would be your ideal pairing? I've seen somebody there suggest potentially putting Hendrick and Sean Longstaff together and letting them develop a partnership. But who would you play? Who would you play?
I think the two of them are somewhat immobile. I have to say that the fella who really impressed me is the fella that's been out in the wilderness for ages.
Murphy.
Murphy. Yeah, he thoroughly impressed me, and he impressed everybody that was around me. So when somebody gives you that, and when was the last time he played? 2-3 years ago.
Yeah, I mean he's been out on loan. I mean he's certainly developed.
Yes, I know. Yeah, he's been out on loan, but
and he played in the cup game. So yeah, I mean he looks. With him,
who would make a good partnership with Murphy? Personally, I think you could put Sean Longstaff alongside of him. Hendrick, he's worrying me. I think it's always very suspicious when a central midfield player disappears in a game. And I find that Hendrick keeps disappearing. I'm looking for him and I can't find him. I want to see a central midfield player who is constantly visible. He's visible to his own side for them to passing the ball. And I'm not seeing that from Hendrick at all. I think he just floats in and out of a game. And that's not good enough for the Premiership. I would like to see how perhaps Sean Longstaff and Murphy could team up. But you have to give it a little time. It's a unique partnership there in the very middle of the park, and you don't create it and form it up over 1 or 2 games. You know, it needs a lot of work in training. But But I just get the feeling that Steve Bruce really hasn't got a clue what his best central pairing is. You know, that he started off with Hayden and Shelby. For me, Hayden is really not good enough at this level. Shelby, he is so moody, and you don't know whether he's going to come out and really give it his all, or whether he's going to want to fanny about on the ball and drop off and hit 60-yard balls. And so I would go, personally, I would go maybe with Sean Longstaff and Murphy.
Okay, what about you, John?
Yeah, well, to be truthful, we haven't got any quality in there that really would get into a top 6 or a top 10 side. That's the first thing I would say. So it's a matter of picking the best of a poor bunch. From my point of view, Murphy is by far the one that gives you the most hope at the moment, but I would have to play him out wide. I wouldn't play him through the middle. I would play him outside wide. I think it's hard enough asking the kid to do a good job and prove himself, because he's been so long out of Newcastle, to prove himself, but in a different position to what he normally plays, and he always plays wide. And I think, in fairness to the lad, you've got to let him continue to play wide and prove himself. You then may decide to change him. Now, if you then talk about who plays centre midfield, for me, it's a process of elimination. It's more who I wouldn't play more than who I would play. Shelby's obviously out of the equation, so at least I can forget about him. I would pull Hendrick out at the moment. I honestly think, Malcolm, that he needs a rest. He is struggling big time, and I think he needs a rest. And I think, for the lad's sake, get him out of there. Now, once I've taken him out, once Shelby's out, once I play Murphy on the wing, who am I going to end up with? I'm going to probably end up with I know he's not Malcolm's favourite, and by God, I know why, but you know, who've you got? I would probably play Hayden this weekend with Sean Longstaff. And I would have probably played Matty Longstaff, but he hasn't played at Premier League level for how long? He was out at the back end of last season as well. Yes. When the contract dispute was on, he never played. He is going to be introduced, when he is introduced, via the subs bench, where he's brought on for a quarter of an hour, for 20 minutes, and end up to being in the team. I don't think he is match sharp enough for this weekend. So I think I would have to go with Hayden and Sean Longstaff. But by the way, that doesn't mean that I'm going with any great hope. But Murphy out wide, with probably Fraser out wide on the other side, and then, you know, or Almiron. And then you look at the number 10 to play behind Wilson, who could be anybody, San Maximum, Almiron, etc., etc. But it's a mix and match at the moment. And I think, going back to what you two boys were talking about, and myself, I just wonder the frame of mind of whoever will play, whether they feel up and at it and buoyant and etc., etc. Because my feeling is that the team do not feel like that at all. And if we don't, then week after week after week, it's a grind. I look at the body language now of Callum Wilson, and I'm terrified to death, because he can play and he's a good centre forward. My worry is that he's getting fed up.
Yeah, he looked it on Saturday, because he's miles ahead, like any good forward, any good goal scorer. Mentally, he's ahead of everybody else in that team. He's making runs, and people aren't picking him up, are they, Malcolm?
Well, he's being left in solitude up there on his own.
He's telling people what to do. I saw him doing more of this, pointing and telling, you know, pass the ball here and do it that, and this is the channel I'm going to run into. And he must be getting so frustrated. Sure. John's right, isn't he?
Yeah, but the reason for him having having such an isolated time as he is doing is because the back four are sitting so far back. They have to push up and push the midfield so that the midfield are actually supporting the centre forward. And that hasn't been happening. And it all comes down to the back four. Get it pushed up.
Yeah. Okay, we're going to move on. We've depressed ourselves enough, and John is on the start. John is at the start of his honeymoon, so I don't want to get him too depressed.
Would you let Steve Bruce know that he's not on his honeymoon anymore?
I love it, John. Now that's a John Gibson line. I love it. We're going to talk about the fans taking the Premier League to court. This is a huge story, isn't it, Malcolm? Because it's come off the back of the War Funds group. It's now been set up by two very passionate Newcastle fans, and it's got the back end of Mike Ashley, which I've got to be honest, is quite incredible. The reason that it's a smart move is, of course, that it fast tracks things. It means it can be taken to court quite quickly, and we don't have to wait months on end for lawyers, etc. And the fans getting involved it's a smart move. So what's your take on it?
Well, I'm not sure of the precise legal argument that they're making, and I'm dying to see it. I really am. But I would think that if Mike Ashley is backing it, then he's let his lawyers have a good look at exactly what it is that these guys are doing, and the lawyers would have said, yeah, they're onto something. So it will be interesting. What is the outcome that they're actually looking for, Steve?
I personally feel this is to try and test the water, shall we say. I think the advice that they've had is that the legal side of things, if Mike Ashley is to pursue it, is going to take a long time. I get the impression that PIF have said we don't want to be waiting around forever. And I get the impression that the War Funds lads have come up with this idea and submitted the idea to Mike Ashley via intermediaries. And I think that Mike Ashley's had a look at it, like you've said. And I think that they've gone, yeah, let's go for this. Because I think it's become quite clear with the revelations that we've had over the last few weeks with regards to the Premier League is that there's a lot of things that the Premier League won't want to come out in public about our takeover. And as we've seen today, it looked very likely that the Burnley takeover is going to go through no problem. So, another takeover has gone through very quickly, yet Newcastle's has stalled. Why? And then we've had all of these stories which have been conveniently leaked out, shall we say, about the Big Six and about potential European Super Leagues, etc. For me, it seems like a campaign, a very smart campaign to almost push the Premier League to say, well, actually, let's get back round the table, Newcastle United, and get this through. And I think this is just another piece of the jigsaw. But watching the social media traffic has been very interesting. And I know you're on Twitter, Mal, not as often as I am, but I know you do go on to retweet things about the show, etc. But I think it's been interesting to see the likes of Jamie Rubin and Mirdad, obviously Amanda's husband, and Anton Deck, of course, who are big Newcastle fans, big celebrities, got a huge following. All of them have been retweeting Liam Kennedy's articles from the Shields Gazette with regards to this legal challenge. So there's obviously something going on. There's obviously a connection between the buyer and the seller. They're still talking. I think it's very positive. And I think the big aim, Malcolm, as your question was, is to remind the Premier League that if this does go to court, then their dirty linen will be washed in public. And it's whether they're willing to, whether they're willing to stand there and accept it, because heads will roll, Malcolm, I think.
Yeah. I've found it beyond credulity that that they could just sit on it for 17 and a half weeks and say nothing, absolutely nothing. And as you say, the Burnley things being sort of rushed through almost.
Yep. John, what's your take on it? I mean, you've obviously got your contacts as well, and you'll have read a lot of the stuff that Lee Wright has been putting out as well, and Lee's been putting out some good stuff as well as obviously Liam at Gazette, who got the exclusive on it. What's your take been on it?
Well, I'm just delighted, first and foremost, that it's happening, because once the takeover guys run into the problems they run into, the onus and the best way of handling it was the fans to kick up an absolute rumpus and say, we're not going to stand for this. We want action. We want explanations. We want it to happen. And I think it's terrific that we're keeping going on this. And well done the fans for highlighting it and taking it, the court case, the way it is. That is nothing but good news. The Burnley thing is just outrageous, isn't it? The outrageous is not the Burnley thing going through. It's ours not. And theirs going through so easily. We've got to keep the foot on the neck of the Premier League. This is helping to do that. My worry is exactly what you said earlier, Steve, that we've got to force things as much as we can now, because how long can we expect the Saudis to stand on the sideline waiting, hoping that something might happen, and eventually they're going to put the tent and disappear. Eventually, we're keeping the whole thing warm at the moment. I think it does have legs. I think it's up. I'm relatively cautiously optimistic, and the only reason I'm cautious is because we've lived in this land of either a fantasy island that Newcastle are going to get taken over at some time, and every time we get whoops up, somebody comes along and slaps us off the perch, and we fall to the bottom of the pit again. But I'm hopeful, cautiously hopeful, but I'm off glad that a few bars are being rattled in this, because the Premier League has been an absolute disgrace, and they're just going to make us feel even worse over the Burnley situation. Let them take as much stick as they will take, and let's keep our fingers crossed that somewhere along the line we've got to get an even break. Somewhere along the line, Newcastle United fans have got to get an even break. I find it ironic, as you mentioned early on, Steve, that Ashley is actually batting on our side now. Who's ever thought in the 13 tortuous years that we've had, we would actually say, good old Mike Ashley batting with us against the Premier League? That is, if we take two steps back, that's absolutely staggering, Malcolm, that Ashley's trying to get what the fans want. But we know why, of course, because he's got very large pockets, and £300 million in them would look very nice. Thank you very much. But Geordie's all the same, aren't we? When we always get down and depressed, but we are a nation of people whose glass is half full rather than half empty. And as long as this is going on, we hope.
Yep, good points. Well made. Darren Baldwin Funerals, big thank you to you for your sponsorship of the StreamYard application this month. I know this is coming towards the end now, but big thank you to you. And I know you're going to come back and do it again in January. And as always, a big shout out to qtechshop.co.uk, who make snooker tables and pool tables in the heart of Newcastle in Wallsend. And big shout out to those lads, always handy. And big thank you to everyone who subscribed. Liam Kennedy's show hit new figures the other night, obviously when he was talking about all this fans business. And thanks to all the new subscribers. If you want to subscribe, just click the little subscribe button. It's free to do that. And you can come back and watch all the other shows we do 7 nights a week. And if you want to join and donate something, then please do, as little as you want. Next up, lads, we can talk a little bit, I suppose, about Steve Bruce and these comments last week. I'm not sure whether you saw the interview, but he did give an indication that he was on his way, Malcolm, that he wouldn't be here for much longer. It seemed like a little bit of a Freudian slip, and of course, the people who saw the interview on Sky had edited it down to that 30-second clip where he said he wouldn't be here much longer. But the interview was 3 minutes long, and it seemed as if it was taken slightly out of context. But all being said, it was still quite a strange thing to say when you're a manager of a football club.
Very strange indeed. Yeah, I don't know. Is he finding it all a bit of a strain being interviewed so constantly at the moment? Because I can't think of any reason why he would have said what he did. So maybe he misspoke. I
wouldn't it be nice?
Go on, John.
I was going to say, wouldn't it be nice, Malcolm, if he knew he didn't know what we've just been talking about, and he pretty well thought that Newcastle United takeover was going to go ahead, and if it did, of course, then a taxi draws up at St James's Park. He might know something we don't know, Steve. What about that, pal?
Right,
he might do.
Yeah, maybe he does, but it would be a change of tack for him, because when the takeover was in its early stages, he never got involved whatsoever in any conversation with regards to it being taken over, and he wouldn't be drawn. Why would he get involved now and be drawn?
Yeah, no, I was being flip and being hopeful. I think maybe the pressure gets to you eventually. You know, if you make a stand trying to tell people that Newcastle are doing well and they've got X number of points, when we know that the point we got at Spurs was ridiculous, the point we got at Wolves was ridiculous, etc., etc., etc. Maybe you get, it's like King Canute. If King Canute got sick of trying to tell the tide to go the other way, maybe it's the same with Steve Bruce.
Maybe. King Canute, I think, sat there to make a point to all his people around him, all his subjects, that he wasn't got.
And what about King Bruce? What about King Bruce? Who's he making the point to then?
Yeah, precisely.
Other news today, guys. Finally, we have a decision on season tickets from Newcastle United. Newcastle United have now confirmed the details of how they propose to reimburse current season ticket holders, which is good news, I suppose, Malcolm. The fans have been waiting for communication from the club on this, and it's quite obvious there'll be no football supporters allowed at St James's Park for quite a while yet. So it's only right that fans get their money back, isn't it?
Absolutely. If it was in anything else, if a shop didn't deliver what you had ordered, then they would have to refund you. Any business, and Newcastle United is a business, and they haven't been able to deliver the product in the way that they were selling it in the first place to supporters, and so. Yes, I think that they can't just say to supporters, "Oh, sorry, but you've lost your money." I would think that's verging almost on the illegal. It is, and it's been a long time coming that an answer has finally been found by the club to do something about it. And I know I have spoken with a lot of people who are season ticket holders and more, and they are getting quite angry about it all. So I think that Newcastle United need to get this put into place very quickly.
Yeah, John, it's good news, isn't it, for the supporters that they can, finally at least contact the club and try and get reimbursed with their hard-earned cash at such a difficult time.
Yeah, without a shadow of a doubt, it's good news. But let us not give too much credit to Newcastle United for that good news, because it's been long overdue. They're like the cow's tail. They're always behind. I mean, they're about the last Premier League club that's come round and done something about the punters. As Malcolm said, it almost bordered on the illegal. You cannot hold on to people's money that is not yours because you haven't produced what you're supposed to produce for the fans, which is the ability to watch matches. That hasn't happened. So I'm not giving credit to Newcastle United for this, because they've been like the cow's tail. They've waited, and they've been one of the last to act. All I say is about time.
Yep. Birthdays. I thought I would bring this up now. Happy birthday to Anthloma, who's had a horrendous few years battling cancer. We wish him all the best. His birthday today. And somebody who you two guys know very well, Stuart Barraclough.
Yeah. Bless him.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Memories of Stuart, Malcolm?
Yes, I can remember stood on the steps outside the main entrance at St James's Park. I was stood with Joe Harvey, and he said to me, he said, I'm expecting any moment for the new signing to arrive. And I said, oh, who's that? He said, Stuart Barraclough. He said, he's almost as quick as you. He said, and what a crosser of the ball. I said, oh, that sounds really good. And all of a sudden, in through the main gate, came Stuart Barraclough on a Vespa motor scooter. And it had a big aerial at the back with the old rabbit's tail on it. And he had a parka with the fur around the hood. and he came potting across the car park. Brilliant. And Joe, very quietly, sort of half looked at me and he said, well, that machine's got to go. And he barred him from riding his motor scooter.
Brilliant.
Yeah. Oh, I used to so enjoy Joe, the way he would just make these little comments under his breath. You had to stand close to hear them. But he just said, that machine's got to go.
Brilliant. That's great. John, yeah. memories of... go on, Mal. Go on, finish.
Well, I was just going to say that the beauty about Stuart Barraclough was that John Tudor and I knew that as soon as he got within sight of the dead ball line, that he would cross the ball, but he didn't cross it like other people where they sort of get the foot underneath it and knock it up. Because of his pace, he so often had got the defence turned and running back at their own goal. And what he used to do was he used to drive his cross in like a shot. So it was coming low and hard. And it was great for just, all you had to do was just get half an inch in front of the defender and get your head to it, or your toe to it. So he made John Tudor and I a lot of goals, and he put a fair old wind up a lot of left backs. They didn't like playing against him because of his pace, and he was a lovely fella as well. He really was, Stewie. Lovely fella. I don't know whether people are aware, but I was talking to somebody who said, "Oh, I saw Stuart Barraclough," and I said, "Oh, do tell me what's he up to? What's he doing?" And he said, "Oh, he's back in Barnsley, and he's got a stall in Barnsley Market." And the fella said, "You don't look surprised." I said, "No, because that was what Stewie was about. You know, I could see him wheeling and dealing in the market of his hometown. Lovely lad, Stewie. Great lad.
Great stories. John, your memories of Stewie Barraclough on his birthday today?
A lot of memories. He was a good pal of mine when he was up here. I went out with him a lot. And the amazing thing is, we would nightclub, and Malcolm was probably with us at the time. he was so flamboyant and so full of life and such a bouncy guy. He's having. Joe would get a phone call the next morning. Joe always ignored them and said, Stuart Barraclough was in a nightclub last night, absolutely ratted. And they thought he was ratted because he was jumping around and laughing. He didn't drink. They thought he was drinking Bacardi and Coke, and he was just drinking the Coke. There was no Bacardi in it. And Joe used to get these calls. By the way, Saucy used to report me or Malcolm or anybody like that because we could hold a drink. He looked as if he couldn't hold his drink. The only trouble was he wasn't drinking. He didn't drink. It was a lovely man. You know, when you have friendships with footballers, as a journalist, I'm now talking, as a hack, if you've got anything about you, you protect those players because somebody might, and you'll give up a very, very good story to protect them. And one of the reasons you might do that, apart from loyalty and because you're a very good friend, is you'll get paid back threefold in the future because a player will appreciate things and things will come your way that can. And I always remember my one bid in the 74 Cup final, and it come out that Barrett, the one mistake I think, and I know Malcolm agrees with me, that Joe made very few, was he dropped him for the 74 Cup final and played Jakey Smith and we had nobody wide and the two guys up front didn't get any crosses. But when that become apparent to
sorry, John.
Can I just finish?
Yeah, okay.
Go on, mate.
No, I'll
just finish. So what happened? I heard somebody come down and told me, said, hey, your mate, meaning Barrett, is took it so badly, blimey, wouldn't you? You're not going to play in the cup final when you're a first team regular. He said he's took it so badly. He says he's upstairs and he's threatening to be packing his bags to go home. I suddenly realized if he did that, his career at Newcastle United is finished, mine. And the headlines for all the fans are going to be terrible and he's going to look horrendous. It might be a knee-jerk reaction that's understandable. If I'm not wanted, I may as well go. But I went upstairs to his room and told him exactly what we are talking about now. Barrett, don't do it. It's an unbelievable decision, but you've got to live with it. This could ruin your career. This would make you look bad to the fans. Don't do it. He didn't do it. And I'm not taking credit for that, but he didn't do it. He saw sense. He thought about it. Yeah. And I did myself out of a story. United star walks out on the eve of the cup final. But that's what it wasn't about for me. If you've got a friendship with somebody, you'll protect them from themselves in situations like that, because you know it's a genuine friendship, and you know in the future, not that I was thinking of it that way, but you know that stories will come your way that are good stories because the guy will appreciate it long term. And I was glad that happened, and I was glad he didn't make the move. He is and was, as Malcolm says, and Malcolm really knows, and I know how much Malcolm adored him as a player on the field because of what he did for Supermac and for John Tudor. But a genuinely nice guy. And I had a lot of time for him. And a lot of people didn't realise, Malcolm certainly did, what a good player he was because he was lightning quick. And he didn't hang the ball up 20 foot in the air. He drove it across. So Malcolm, you've just got to get in touch with your head then when the ball is driven. And there was no two better people for getting their head on crosses than Malcolm MacDonald and John Tudor.
But just going back to those couple of days prior to the cup final, and Stewie only found out, I think, on the Thursday that he wasn't going to be playing, and he played all the way through the season. And and the way that we played was when we were defending, we were 4-4-2, and as soon as we got possession and started to go forward, Stewie would push up, and we became 4-3-3. And Alec Lindsay was the Liverpool left back who was one of the slowest footballers in the first division at the time, and he would have been panicking as to how to deal with the quickest right winger in the country, and he would have just been dreading the match. He arrived at Wembley to see the team sheet, and there was no Stuart Barraclough. It was Christmas and all his birthdays rolled into one for him. He went out on the field suddenly relieved of this nightmare of having to face Stuart Barraclough, and he just went pew, pew, and just kept going on up the line. I think he scored in the first half, and it was disallowed for somebody offside in the penalty area. He was just knocking ball after ball into the box and causing us all sorts of problems. And he finished up. He was Liverpool's best player. It was the most ridiculous thing. And I know that you said that it was Joe Harvey that dropped him. My impression at the time was it was Keith Birkinshaw's decision. I was pretty sure of that. It was Keith Birkinshaw who wanted us to play with this narrow mid four, and that excluded a wide man, and hence Stuart was dropped, and we played Terry McDermott, Jimmy Smith, Tommy Cassidy, I believe, and Terry Hibbett. And even Hibby was instructed to squeeze in so that there were just big channels down the sides for the Liverpool fullbacks to flood down. No wonder John Tudor and I, we were just completely starved of service. We hardly saw the ball at all in the whole of the game. And changes weren't made. That was the annoying thing, that when you see it not going right, and we said so at half time, because incredibly it was still 0-0, and we said in the dressing room, we've got to spread out, we've got to stop the flooding forward down the flanks, and then when we get the ball, we have to have width, and you know, John Tudor and I, having played a whole season, in fact, we played a whole of 3 seasons with a wide man who was quick and could whack the ball into the box. All of a sudden, he's not there. Well, it was like having a leg cut off. You know, it was an absolute balmy decision. Probably one of the daftest team selection boo-boos that I've ever come across.
Amazing insight into that, and I think we will have to do some kind of show, lads. We'll have a chat via email, and we'll have to do some kind of chat where we'll look back over particular games or particular seasons that you played, Malcolm. And John was at them all as well, and I mean, you know, he'll be able to fill in any gaps that you have. I do want to ask this question before we go on to the Everton game. Jasmine Black asks this question, and it might be one that one or both of you can answer. The Newcastle captain carried the same lucky penny on the pitch in 1924, 1932, 1951, 1952 and 1955. Does Supermac or John know if Bobby Moncur did the same in 74?
I've never heard of this ever. Haven't heard of it at all, Steve and John. Have you, John?
Yeah, I have heard of the original idea that the penny went on in all those years. The only thing I'd say to that, Steve, answering the question, was that I presume Bob Moncur didn't, because I tell you what, this time it didn't work, mate. It worked on all those occasions we won the cup. In 74, there wasn't a lucky penny. I can tell you that. That's a sin. But no, I mean, I know Bob very well. Malcolm was actually in the team. We would have known if there was a lucky penny, whether it worked or not. No, I don't think that was the case in 74. And neither was it the case in 76, and neither was it the case in 1998 or 1999 either.
Most had a bad penny. A bad penny always turns up.
And where was it kept?
Yes.
Where was this penny supposed to be kept?
Jasmine, we're going to have to get an answer.
On match days, Malcolm, it was kept in a pocket in the shorts. It was kept in the pocket of the shorts of the skipper. He had an inside pocket in the shorts just on the band, and he put the penny in there.
Right, but then
he didn't toss up with it or anything like that. It was just in the shorts, a lucky penny for Newcastle. The rest.
But where was it kept between cup finals? Because there were years between cup finals. Where on earth was it?
That's right. Well, I think
because I've never heard anything about it at all.
Wow, it's a mental
yeah,
story.
I have.
Yeah.
I think it was probably kept by Mike Ashley because he doesn't spend any money, so he would have had it for all those years.
Maybe somebody spent a penny after the 1955 Cup final and it never came back.
Quite possibly.
Right, lads. Everton at the weekend. Let's get your predictions. 2 p.m. kickoff live on Sky Sports, not pay-per-view. Hurrah! John Joe Shelby, Martin Dubravka, Dwight Gale and Matt Ritchie all remain on the sidelines. For Everton, Lucas Digna, following his dismissal at Southampton, will miss the game. The appeal that he had saw his original ban reduced to 1 game. Richarlison will also sit out the visit to Tyneside following his red card against Liverpool. Seamus Coleman or John Joe Kenny are both injury doubts as well at this stage. Tough game. Everton have done well. Malcolm, how do you see this one going?
Oh, they really have been playing very, very well. I know they had one hiccup, didn't they, where they'd just been beaten 2-0. But other than that, they have been absolutely super. He really is a top manager, is Ancelotti. By heavens, he gets a team organised and organised very quickly. I think that he's a very cunning manager who tactically will completely outwit Steve Bruce. I really do. And I think that he will come out with a way of playing on Sunday that takes Newcastle apart. And I've got a horrible feeling that Newcastle are going to get well beaten.
Prediction, Malcolm?
And I can't see Newcastle scoring because we just don't get forward. I'm going to take Everton to win 3-0. Saddens me to say, I have to say. It really saddens me.
Everton to win 3-0. Okay. John?
Yeah, in lots of ways, this should be the best time to play Everton. They started the season like an express train. The bubble was burst at Southampton. Can you cash in on that? No, you can't if it happens to be Newcastle United. We must be the best opposition for... Ancelotti must be saying, you were hopeless against Southampton. What's next? Oh, it's okay. It's only Newcastle. Because it ought to be the right game. My hope is that Pickford, our delightful Sunderland friend, goes absolutely try to castrate everybody and throws the ball 3 times into his own net. My main hope for Newcastle United is not who they've got, but is Pickford. Now I'll come to reality, and the reality is that I can't see any hope. Newcastle defy, I mean, Newcastle at Spurs ought to be slaughtered. They got a point. Newcastle Wolves ought to be slaughtered. They got a point. I can't see anything happening but Newcastle losing and Newcastle failing to score, as Malcolm said. I'm just hoping that if you pack the side with 10 defenders in Wilson, you can keep it to 2-0 instead of 3-0. Isn't that something to look forward to? I think I might just go out on the lawn and pull my teeth out with a pair of pliers instead of watching the game.
Good stuff. I'll be back tomorrow night with a full set of teeth, I hope, with Steve Hasty and Neil Mitchell. And the Three Amigos show starts at 6, finishes at 8. So that's tomorrow night. We'll be picking the bones out of the last 7 days at Newcastle United. Malcolm, John, it's always a pleasure. It's always great to get those stories from yesteryear as well. Look forward to having you on next week. John, enjoy your honeymoon.
Yes, indeed, John.
Take
Let
care.
Newcastle United enjoy your honeymoon on Sunday, and then I'll enjoy myself as well.
Until next week, lads. Take care. Good night.
Indeed. Good night.
God bless. Good night, folks.